What's up, YouTube? Hey, I am playing here a little bit with my latest project. This is a 2005 Jeep Wrangler LJ, the 4-liter, straight six. And one of the issues that seems to be kind of a recurring thing with these 4-liters is circumstance that you get in, start the engine up, and the oil pressure gauge does not come up. So on this particular model, you get a beep and a flashing light on the dash that says check gauges. And that's not exclusive to the Wrangler. I've also had that in Grand Cherokees. I've not owned an XJ, but I would imagine that in a Cherokee with a 4-liter, that same kind of thing could be a possibility in circumstances where you don't actually have an oil pressure gauge. And these vehicles, while they look like they have a gauge, don't actually have a gauge. What they have is a dummy light with a needle. And basically that sending unit down there is not a sending unit at all. A typical sending unit will vary the resistance through the unit to ground based on the pressure that's coming down to it. Some of them ground to the engine block, some of them are actually a 2-wire sensor. This is just a 1-wire sensor, so what that tells us typically is that this is just a switch. And you can kind of get that from this thing when it's idling. The oil pressure never really varies much. It kind of stays right in the center of the gauge, doesn't move up and down a lot as engine RPMs change, which is not typical of oil pressure. Oil pressure should fluctuate. As the engine warms up, the oil pressure gets lower as the oil gets thinner. As RPMs increase, you should see some change in that oil pressure as well. So typically tends to be a bad pressure switch. And went ahead and got a new one for this one. This is not a Mopar part. I'm not paying for the name. This is Standard Motor Products, which is a good name. They've been making these sensors as OEM for a lot of different companies for a long time. This is part number PS404, and it's just a pretty simple pressure switch. Threads into the side of the engine. This one's got some sealant on the threads there so that it doesn't leak and make a mess. You can see it's only a 1-wire connection in there. And I'll show you where this goes. It's really not that big a deal. Threads out of the engine block, you may get a little bit of oil. Thread the new one in, reconnect the connector. So I'm going to go ahead and scoot under the Jeep here. I'll show you where this is at. Now, your results may vary on this job. This one tends to be a little different to work on because, as many of these Wrangler TJs do, this one has a little body lift on it. So now we're under here, just so you can kind of see where we're at. Frame, I'm behind the front passenger side wheel. I'm going to look up here past the oil filter, and you can see that sensor there, kind of in between the dipstick tube there and the wiring harness here. That's the sensor. So working around this exhaust pipe, I guess you could get up through it here. So I'll show you what this looks like, because this one has a body lift on it. I've got a lot of extra clearance here between the frame and the tub, and that's because of these body lift bushings. So I can actually go right in through here between the tub and the frame and access what I need. Real easy to get to. I've already loosened this with a wrench. I just use a channel locks to get on the metal down here and turn this guy loose. So I could actually get it through there. If you can't do that because yours doesn't have a body lift, there is actually room here between the exhaust pipe and the transmission bell housing that you can get your arm up through and do it through there as well. So either way you go, really it's just as simple as threading that sensor out and replacing it. The wiring connector has this little red safety tab on it. That's got to be popped up and then you can kind of squeeze right here and pop it loose and just pull it off. So I'm going to go ahead and replace that sensor. That should be about all there is to this project, and that should take care of our quote-unquote oil pressure issue. It's just a bad sending switch, so not too bad a job. Hopefully your results are the same, and your 4-liter is good for many, many more miles. So thanks for watching. We'll catch you on the next one.